The leather folder sat in front of me on the mahogany desk, heavy as a heartbeat. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was a life sentence, or maybe a liberation. Inside were the deeds to my grandmother's 21st birthday gift to me. The Thorne Grand Hotel, a $50 million masterpiece of glass and steel downtown, with my name, Clara Thorne, etched into the legal framework. I stared at the embossed lettering, my fingers trembling just slightly. But before I could even breathe, before I could process the weight of the legacy handed to me, the front door of the estate flew open. The heavy oak slammed against the wall, echoing through the foyer like a gunshot. My mother, Sylvia, walked in, her heels clicking a sharp, aggressive rhythm on the marble. Her new husband, Julian, was right behind her, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They didn't knock, they didn't call. They just marched into the library where I sat, bringing a gust of cold air and expensive, cloying perfume with them. "Clara, darling," Sylvia said, breathless, her eyes locking onto the folder on the desk. "We heard the news. We need to talk about the transition." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't say happy birthday. She went straight for the kill. "We've been discussing it in the car," Julian added, stepping forward, his presence filling the room with an oily kind of confidence. "A property of this magnitude, it's a beast. You can't handle it alone. We've decided we should manage it together, as a family." Sylvia smiled then, a stretched, thin thing that looked like it was painful to hold. "Exactly. We'll take over the operations, put the assets in a trust we control, and give you a monthly allowance. It's for your own good, really." I looked at them, my mother, who treated me like an accessory, and Julian, a man who spoke in buzzwords and looked at people like they were wallets to be emptied. I placed my hand flat on the leather folder. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm the owner now. Grandma gave it to me, not us." Sylvia's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a sneer that revealed the ugliness she usually kept hidden under layers of foundation. "Excuse me." "I said no," I repeated, standing up. "Then pack your bags and leave this house," she snapped, her voice rising to a shriek. "If you think you can stand there and defy me after everything I've sacrificed, you can get out. Right now." I didn't argue, I didn't move, I didn't even blink. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that this night wasn't about their demands, and it certainly wasn't about their sacrifice. It was about my grandmother's next move. One that would end their little performance for good. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious, where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I read every single one. When people look at me now, they see the hotel. They see the marble floors, the vaulted glass lobby, the name Thorne etched in gold above the entrance. They see a young woman in a tailored suit, holding the keys to a kingdom. But what they don't see is the noise that used to live inside this family. They don't see the wreckage we had to climb over to get here. My grandmother, Evelyn Thorne, built everything from nothing. She started with one roadside motel in Vermont in the late 60s. She was 21 then, my age now. Everyone called her foolish. They said a woman couldn't run a hospitality business alone, that she'd be bankrupt in a year. But Evelyn had a spine made of iron. She turned those doubts into brick and revenue. By the time I was born, the Thorne collection had become a name people whispered with envy. My mother, Sylvia, inherited none of Evelyn's patience, only her pride. To Sylvia, success wasn't about building, it was about being seen. She didn't care about the foundation, she cared about the ribbon cutting. She loved camera flashes more than blueprints. She loved control more than family. I grew up watching her pose for magazines, talking about her empire, while Grandma Evelyn sat in the background, reviewing ledgers. My father, Thomas, was the opposite. He was calm, steady, a man who believed in doing things right, even when it took longer. He ran operations for years, quietly keeping everything standing while Mom chased appearances. He was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who sat with me when I had nightmares. He was the glue. But when I was 16, I watched that balance collapse. I still remember the night Dad left. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the street lamps outside. His suitcase sat by the door, looking small and tired. "I can't do it anymore, Clara," he whispered, crouching down to hug me. "I can't stay where love has become a performance." He looked at Sylvia, who was standing at the top of the stairs, her arms crossed, her face like stone. She didn't cry. She just checked her watch. The silence that followed him out the door was the kind that fills every corner and never leaves. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. After that, Sylvia didn't mourn the marriage, she rebranded. She remarried quickly to Julian, a smooth-talking business consultant who spoke in phrases like synergy and global expansion. He was everything she thought success looked like: shiny, loud, and hollow. Not long after, she sent me to live with Grandma Evelyn. She claimed it was for stability, so I could focus on my schooling without the distraction of their busy social calendar. I knew better. I was just one less witness to their vanity. Life with Grandma Evelyn was quiet but never dull. Her home, the estate where I now stood facing down my mother, smelled of cedar, old books, and strong black coffee. Her mornings began with the sound of typewriter keys. She refused to use a computer for her personal correspondence. Clack, clack, ding. It was the rhythm of my adolescence. She treated me not as a child, but as an apprentice. While other teenagers were out partying, I was in her study, looking at blueprints. I studied architecture because she showed me what legacy truly meant. Legacy isn't money, Clara, she told me one rainy afternoon, tracing an old property map with a soft smile. It's discipline, it's risk, and it's the courage to start over when others call you finished. She'd point to the sketches of that first motel. Every building tells a story. The walls remember who built them and why. I didn't understand back then that she was also talking about people. She was talking about the foundations we build within ourselves. Years passed. My mother's calls grew shorter, her words sharper. "You should visit," Sylvia would say over the phone, her voice tight. "Julian wants to talk about the European market. He thinks you could be useful." "I have an exam, Mom," I'd say. "Always an excuse," she'd sigh, disappointed. "We're trying to build a future for you, Clara. You're so ungrateful." We were strangers, connected only by blood and legal paperwork. Until that morning, my 21st birthday, Grandma asked me to sit at her desk. The leather folder was waiting there. "This is your inheritance," she said, her voice serious. "But it is also your test." "Test?" I asked. "Sometimes," she said, looking out the window toward the driveway, "the moment you receive everything you've ever wanted is the same moment you find out who is coming to take it from you." I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. But then the doorbell rang. Dinner that night was supposed to be a celebration. Just me and Grandma. Roasted lamb, candlelight flickering across the long oak table, and Grandma smiling in that rare, peaceful way she had when the work was done. For once, the house was quiet, filled only with the sound of silver against china. I remember thinking, maybe things are finally steady. Maybe I can breathe. Then the doorbell rang. It was one of those small sounds that changes the trajectory of your life. I got up, napkin still in my hand. When I opened the door, the chill from the porch hit me first, and then her perfume. Sylvia stood there in a cream coat, her hair curled just so, her smile stretched thin and glossy. Beside her was Julian, wearing that smug confidence that always smelled like cheap cologne and deceit. "Clara," Mom's voice dripped with cheer. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. We were just in the area and thought we'd stop by." Behind me, Grandma's chair scraped softly against the floor. They didn't wait to be invited in. Julian carried a gift bag, the kind you give when you already know what you want in return. Mom's eyes darted around the house, assessing, calculating. Finally, her gaze landed on the leather folder, which I had foolishly left on the side table near the entry. "We heard about your big gift," she said, her tone sugar-wrapped with poison. $50 million, the hotel, how wonderful." I tried to stay polite. "It's not about the number, Mom. Grandma wanted me to continue what she started." Sylvia laughed lightly, waving a manicured hand. Of course, but running a business that size isn't for children, Clara. You'll need experience, guidance. That's why Julian and I thought we could manage it together. As a family." That word, family, it landed like a slap. Julian leaned forward, resting his hands on the back of an antique chair. "It's too much for one person, Clara. Let us help. We've already drafted a proposal. We take executive control, you stay on the board, nominal role. You can focus on your little architecture drawings." Grandma's voice sliced through the room. "A proposal for something that isn't yours." She stepped into the light, looking smaller than I remembered, but radiating a power that made Julian straighten his spine. "Mother," Sylvia said, shooting her a warning look, the same cold defiance she used to use on Dad. "Please, let's be practical." "Practical," Grandma repeated, as if tasting the word. "Like when you mortgaged the Burlington property without authorization, or when you disappeared for 6 months to expand and came back with nothing but debt." The color drained from Mom's face. "That was years ago." "Yes," Grandma said softly. And I remember every year it cost me. I stood there, silent, the tension pressing against my ribs. The room smelled of rosemary from the dinner and the metallic tang of rage. Mom turned back to me, her voice brittle. Clara, don't let her turn you against me. We're family. We should rebuild together. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the way she looked at that folder told me the truth. This wasn't about rebuilding. It was about reclaiming power she felt she had lost. No, I said. And that's when she snapped. That's when she told me to pack my bags. That's when she told me to leave my grandmother's house. You're kicking me out, I asked, my voice trembling with adrenaline. This isn't even your house, Sylvia. I am her daughter, Sylvia screamed, her composure shattering. I have power of attorney. I will have you removed. Julian stepped in, trying to play the peacemaker but failing. Now, let's not get emotional. Clara, just sign the management agreement. It's the smart play. Grandma walked over to the table. She picked up the leather folder, the one with the hotel deed, and moved it aside. Underneath it was a second folder. This one was gray, unassuming. Dinner is over, Grandma said calmly. Some things aren't up for discussion. Don't walk away from me. Sylvia lunged forward, grabbing Grandma's arm. I stepped between them. Don't touch her. Sylvia recoiled, looking at me like I was a stranger. You ungrateful little brat, after everything I gave up for you. You gave up nothing, I yelled, the years of silence finally breaking. You gave up Dad, you gave up me. You traded us for a lifestyle you couldn't even afford. I did what I had to do to survive. You didn't survive, Grandma interrupted, her voice steel. You stole. The room went dead silent. Grandma opened the gray folder. She didn't look at Sylvia, she looked at the papers. You wanted transparency, Sylvia. You wanted to talk about management. Grandma slid the papers across the table toward Julian. Julian picked them up. As he read, his smug smile dissolved. His face went pale, then gray. What is this? Julian whispered. Bank statements from the Burlington account, Grandma said. Withdrawals made under Brenda Bennett's signature, forged, I might add. Funds that never returned. Sylvia froze. Mother, that's absurd. And these, Grandma continued, pulling out another sheet, are emails from Julian's consulting firm. Proposals for overseas expansion projects that do not exist. Fake invoices, ghost accounts. I looked at the papers. Millions of dollars, funneled out of the family business slowly over years. You had no right to pry into, Julian started, his voice shaking. I had every right, Grandma snapped. You tried to mortgage the core hotels under shell companies. You thought I was too old to notice. You thought I was just a senile old woman typing on a typewriter. She looked at me, her eyes fierce. They didn't come here for your birthday, Clara. They came because the bank called them this morning. Their loans are due. They need your hotel as collateral to save themselves. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. My mother wasn't here to help me manage my legacy. She was here to liquidize it to cover her crimes. Sophia, Clara, Mom stammered, forgetting my name for a split second in her panic. This isn't true, she's twisting things. We can explain. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not a mother, but a desperate woman clinging to a cliff she had jumped off years ago. There's nothing to explain, I said quietly. Grandma slid one last document across the table. The ownership amendment, she said. Effective immediately, all control transfers solely to Clara Thorne. You are hereby removed from every board, every trust, and every account. Mom stared at the page like it might catch fire. You can't do this, she whispered. This is my legacy, my life. You handed it away yourself, Grandma said. Julian grabbed Mom's arm, muttering, Sylvia, let's just go, we can fix this. But she wasn't done. She pulled away from him, her face twisted in hate. No, you think you've won, she pointed a shaking finger at me. You're a child playing grown-up. You'll drown in paperwork before the month is out. I met her glare steady. Maybe. But at least it'll be my mess. Her lip trembled, rage fighting humiliation. Then pack your bags, she spat again, echoing her earlier threat. Leave this house, you're dead to me. Grandma laughed. It wasn't loud, just a soft, knowing chuckle that sliced the air cleaner than any scream. You're right, Sylvia, Grandma said. Someone is leaving this house tonight, but it isn't Clara. For a second, everything froze. Even the fire seemed to stop moving. Then Grandma reached into her purse and placed one final envelope on the table. It was thick, official. A court order, Grandma said. You've both been served. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The investigators are waiting outside. Julian's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the back of the chair to stay standing. You called the police. I called justice, Grandma said simply. Mom stumbled back, shaking her head. You wouldn't, I'm your daughter. No, Grandma said, and her voice broke for the first time. You were, until you sold this family's name for a mirror and a title. We heard the sirens then. Red and blue lights washed over the walls of the dining room, painting us in the colors of consequence. Two officers entered quietly, their presence polite but final. Julian didn't fight. He just stared at the floor, looking small and defeated. Mom followed, her breath ragged, her eyes wild. She looked at me one last time, pleading. Clara, please. I didn't say anything, I couldn't. I just watched as the people who were supposed to protect me were led away by strangers. When the door closed, silence filled the house again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of my father leaving. It was lighter, cleaner, the kind of silence that heals instead of haunts. I sank into my chair, my chest tight, my hands trembling. Grandma placed her hand over mine. Her skin was paper-thin, but her grip was strong. I'm sorry you had to see that. No, I whispered. I needed to, she nodded once, her eyes glassy. You handled yourself better than I ever did. I looked at the empty plates, the folded napkins, the remnants of the storm we just survived. Do you think she'll ever forgive us? I asked quietly. Grandma sighed. Forgiveness is for people who admit what they've done. Your mother still thinks she was robbed. I walked to the window. Outside, the cruiser was pulling away. I saw Sylvia in the back seat, mascara streaking down her face, looking back at the house she would never enter again. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't even feel relief. Just a deep, quiet ache for the family we could have been. You did good, Clara, Grandma said, joining me at the window. You didn't raise your voice, you raised your worth. Her words settled in my chest like something permanent. The morning after felt unreal. The sun slipped through the curtains, landing on the leather folder still sitting at the center of the table, the one that had ended it all. Grandma was already up, sipping coffee in the kitchen. Her shoulders looked lighter, her face softer, as if decades of weight had finally lifted. The news spread fast. Julian disappeared from the state before the investigation could close, taking a plea deal. Sylvia stayed just long enough to watch her name unravel in every business circle she once worshipped. The fraud case stripped her of everything: money, position, pride. My father, Thomas, came by that afternoon. No speeches, no questions. He simply placed a hand on Grandma's shoulder and said, "You did the right thing." When his eyes met mine, they didn't hold pity, only pride. Weeks later, life began to look almost ordinary again. I finished my final architecture presentation and graduated top of my class. Grandma insisted we celebrate quietly at the hotel's rooftop. No press, no guests, just us. She raised her glass to the city lights glowing below. To new foundations. To new foundations, I echoed. I realized then that this was exactly what this was. A rebuild, not of property or reputation, but of peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the leftover of someone else's legacy. I felt like the beginning of my own. I used to believe legacy was about bloodlines and last names, but I've learned it's about boundaries. It's about the courage to end what's toxic, even when it wears your DNA. My inheritance wasn't a hotel, it was freedom. If you've ever had to choose peace over family pride, share your story below. You're not alone. Thanks for listening.